Jai Hind. That is the
Jai Hind.
yeah. That is the way we used to wish at the time of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. It is my privilege and it is my honor to again host Madam Anita Pfaff. Ma'am, today what happened? I will give you a small thing. In our excitement to talk to you, that we are going to talk to you, we joined half an hour earlier. I mean, my whole team was there, and we joined much earlier than the decided time. Uh, Anita, ma'am, it is otherwise 23rd January is the date of birth of Netaji. But one more thing in 2025 is important. This is going to be the 100th year when Netaji was arrested and went to Mandalay. And this is the 100th year of his. I mean, it is something where, for the first time, he was arrested. He was sent to Mandalay. Mandalay was supposed to be one of the toughest prisons of British India, where Lala Rajpat Rai, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, they were sent. And on a personal ground, Netaji health was also took a beating there in Mandalay, because the the whole thing was not very good for health. To start with, Anitaji, I mean, any specific message, because I am trying to cover this interview in two, three parts. The ideology part of Netaji, his Mandalay prison, and some legacy we will talk. In very small thing. So any specific thing, it is for you. It is very nostalgic again to 23rd January is something we all feel. We all Indians. We all feel very proud to be a part of that legacy of Netaji. Some opening thing on the 23rd January, Anitaji.
Netaji was one of the many freedom fighters. And of course, he was one of the well-known freedom fighters. So we remember him personally more maybe than all the lakhs and crores of people who participated in the independence struggle. But of course, as he himself, I think once said that, or somebody said that without Netaji, his followers are nothing, but without the followers, Netaji is nothing. So let us remember all the other men and women, even if we don't know them by name and by face. But I think it is very gratifying that India today and the Indians today still remember the men and women of those days who really sacrificed a lot. Some of them sacrificed their life, just as my father did. And I think maybe it's the lesson that we can take from thinking of these men and women that is very meaningful today as well, because even today, everyone in a greater or lesser fashion can contribute to the well-being of his countrymen and countrywomen.
Yeah. Antaji, I also want to share with my audience a small anecdote of Mandalay. Netaji was arrested on 24th of October 1924, his first arrest, and then that British government thought that Netaji is too dangerous to be in India. So they transferred them to Burma, now Myanmar, in one of the very high security prison, Mandalay. That was 25th January 1925 when he was shifted. It is going to be 100 years. Now, there is a small anecdote that in October 1925, Netaji planned a Durga Puja in Mandalay. And then the total expenditure was about 800 rupees. Contribution from the prisoners was 140. Netaji demanded 660 rupees from the government as a grant, because his logic was that government was providing grant to Christians to the tune of 1200 rupees for performing their religious festival. So why not for Durga Puja? And then that demand was denied. Then he again appealed, denied, and finally fasting was there, and the government ultimately had to accept. Why am I taking up this issue is Netaji at that point of time was more on a Gandhian path, that this is my right, you have to give it to me, and if you don't agree, I will go for fast. My people will go for fast. I will just want a small reaction on this because Netaji, when he came in 1921 to India, it was Gandhi Ji and Mr. Chittaranjan Das who shaped Netaji's final philosophy towards politics. His policies, the way he was looking at Indian freedom movement. A small reaction on that.
Of course, we also have to take into account that Netaji at that time was a young man. Gandhi G, of course, was a generation older. So at that time, Gandhi Ji certainly had a great appeal to many Indians. But of course, the young people very often, like always, are always a bit more radical. So it was maybe a natural advice by Gandhi Ji and also a natural reaction by my father that he joined C.R. Das in Bengal, and that group, of course, was a bit more radical and more likely to end up in jail, maybe even than the sort of civil disobedience movement.
Antaji, why I'm raising this issue is because Gandhiji and Netaji both the goals were similar. But Gandhi always said that means are non-violence, and for achieving anything, this was non-negotiable. Netaji's strategy was that my goal is to achieve freedom for this country, and for which, even if I have to take up arms, I will not mind it. And Chittaranjan Das ji was more sympathetic towards this extremist young Indian nationalist of that time. I mean, this was the basic difference, but the goal of Gandhiji and Netaji was the same. I mean, they never said that it will be a military rule or it will be army rule. They said, I'm going to take this independence through some non-violence. That was the only difference.
There were different aspects of the independence struggle for the different persons involved. And Gandhiji was non-compromising on the non-violence issue and compromising on some other issues which Netaji would not have compromised on. I would say if you looked at the aspect which was most important for Netaji it was the opposition to the British. And for example, some of the leaders in the 1940s were willing to support the war against the fascist Axis powers, whereas and cooperate with Britain in the process. And this was absolutely no-go for Netaji because he was not compromising on the issue of the opposition to Britain. And so you have different approaches, but the goal was the same.
Was the same. I will also like to understand one thing, Anita ma'am, that you yourself is an economist. You are professor. You had been a professor in universities. I would also like to understand that as an economist, today, don't you feel that world economy is tilted towards the capitalist? It is inequality the way in all parts of the world. In India, it is very extreme. Inequality is something which is very serious, and how Netaji would have addressed it, and how you as an economist feel about it.
Of course, as you mentioned, inequality in many aspects, in wealth, in income, in education, in the ability to participate in the goods of a country are great throughout the world. But I think partly this is, of course, a disappointment because there are many groups, particularly on the left spectrum of the political, on the left side of the political spectrum, who feel that a reduction of inequality is of greatest importance. But if you look at the practical outcome, inequality has been increasing in all the countries. And even though there may be more wealthy people, there are also more poor people in the process. And unfortunately, I don't see where the economists have made a great contribution in reducing this inequality. This is very upsetting, but on the other hand, I'm sure if Netaji had been around as an active politician post-independence, he would have been faced with the same problem and possibly been as helpless in dealing with it as other politicians are today.
Yes. Nay, Anita ma'am, I also want your opinion that the entire world today is moving towards a radical right wingers. I mean, people are talking of religion. People are talking of my religion is in danger. People are talking of no. The economic things has taken a backseat uh, everywhere in the world. I mean everywhere in the world, including India. Uh, how to address it? Because this is something I don't have enough to eat, but my religion is more important for me than my livelihood. I would, as an economist, how you see it?
I'm not so sure that throughout the world, religion has become more important than the economic situation. I think very often the poor people in many parts of the world cling to religion. Unfortunately, not everywhere, because I think religion does have a positive and a negative role to play. The positive role, I think, is your personal identity and your values, but the negative role is, of course, if you take religion as a departing point for violence, for hatred, and so on. And I think if we look at my father in that aspect, we have a very good example how to do it, because he was a very religious man. You mentioned, for example, in Durga Puja that he wanted to observe in jail.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he was adamant about the fact that other religions had to be respected. And it was not just a fancy idea on his part, but he really practiced it in the INA and in the independence movement in Germany, as well as in India, as well as in the Far East.
Yeah.
And I think this is the aspect that is important, because we have different religions. They give identity. For many people, they also give strength, but we should not make them into a tool against others.
Yeah. Anita ma'am, one personal question. We as an Indian, we are very proud of Netaji. It is something that we have posters of Netaji. We always feel that he is someone who we look at it. Now, you as his daughter, at times you have missed him because he left you at a very early age. At the age of 4 months, he left you. So at times you have missed Netaji as a father.
Yeah, I never experienced him as a father. So in that sense, I think my relationship is very similar to that of many Indians who have never seen him.
Yeah. And one more personal question, because I will request you to, if you can share certain photographs of Netaji so that I can show it to my viewers. As a husband, because I'm a married person, I'm married for last 41 years. Uh, there is a companionship, there is a commitment, there is a love. I feel Netaji on that front, he might have stayed for a very short period with your mother, but your mother experience as a companion, as a lover, as a person, how he feels as a husband, Netaji as a husband, not as a leader.
I think my father very clearly did not intend to have a family life, and it sort of was caught up in it to a very limited degree, actually. And he always made it clear, and there are some very few sort of love letters that he wrote, because, as you know, censorship was imposed certainly on those people who were in jail, but for the important leaders also while they were out of jail. And so there were very few of these personal letters, really. And he always made it clear that India is my first love, and only what I can offer you beyond that, I can offer you, even that may not be very much. So I think my parents did not really have much of a sort of family life or private relationship like you have with your wife or I have with my husband. I have been married almost 60 years. So this must have been very disappointing to her, possibly also to him. She never sort of complained about it. She always accepted it, which I respect in her. But it certainly must have been a very difficult situation for her. And if you consider that this happened at a time when you had a terrible war ongoing and many risks to which people were exposed, he certainly was one of the husbands who could not offer much support and protection in that sense, but dedicated all his efforts to the struggle for independence.
Yeah, but Anita ma'am, financial stability is something which is the most important. Everything taken together, whatever I have heard, whatever I have read, whatever letters have transferred, the intensity was there. It was very intense. I mean, when he was writing to your mother, I can feel as a person that intensity and that honesty was there in the letters. He never he never said that these things will come, we will have a good life after this. No, he was absolutely clear that his life is for India. He wants to make India a free country. That's it. But he was very honest on his thing as far as Netaji is concerned with your mother.
I heard a quote. I don't know who had asked him. Somebody, in fact, my husband mentioned it the other day. He said somebody asked him, "When will you get married?" And he said, "After India is free."
But one more, it's slightly on a personal thing because I feel that at times I always felt that you have three children, and all of them have an Indian thing attached to them. Peter, Arun, Thomas, Krishna, Maya, Karina. Why this Indian name is prefixed or suffixed to their name?
I think it was important to us at the time that we also sort of paid homage, so to say, to the Indian heritage, wherever they might live. Of course, they ended up living in other parts of the world, not in India. Our daughter is in South Africa. The two sons are in Germany. But I think in their own way, they all have for all of them, this tie to India was very important.
Yeah, because someday, with your permission, and if your sons are comfortable, I would certainly like to talk to him because my granddaughter, I am everything to him. For my granddaughter, I am his everything to him. So for these three children, Neta Ji must be everything to them, or they remember him, they talk of him frequently, or.
Well, of course, they had a closer relationship with their other grandparents and with my mother, because my mother lived with us for the last 6 years of her life. And we always had a very close relationship to my in-laws. So that was a more personal, direct relationship. They could never sort of form a relationship of that kind with my father, nor could I, of course. But I think they take great pride in their grandfather's life and in his, from what they know, in his personality and his willingness to sacrifice. And they take interest in that. But it was not sort of like a relationship like you have with your grandkids or I have with mine.
Yeah, yeah. And Antaji, one last question. Like Netaji legacy is so much, I mean, we all live with that in India. Uh, he has a lot of followers and a lot of admirers in Pakistan also, because during the
Naturally,
lifetime,
naturally, and Bangladesh for that matter.
yeah, Bangladesh, yeah, and especially Bangladesh. Bangladesh is more natural because they have a common language which Netaji used to
Yeah.
speak. So that's Bangladesh.
Although keep in mind, my father, even though he was a Bengali, he always sort of identified himself as an Indian,
Yeah,
and an Indian of what India was at that time, that is the subcontinent. As you mentioned, the three states, not only what is now called India
yeah, yeah.
or
And one,
Maharashtra.
yeah, and Anita ma'am, the last question, uh, because this also keeps on coming. When the Netaji was raising his INA, purposely the name of the brigades he kept was Gandhi Brigade, Nehru Brigade, and Lakshmi. Why this
Yeah.
Gandhi Nehru Brigade? Why it would have been Shivaji Brigade or maybe Ranjit Singh Brigade or anything else? Why Gandhi Brigade and Nehru Brigade?
Of course, Gandhi and Nehru were the other freedom fighters at the time. Shivaji, of course, was a different era.
Yeah,
But I think many people probably look at Gandhi Ji and my father as opponents, but my father was a great admirer of Gandhi Ji. He called him the father of our nation. It was he who had coined that
Bapu,
um,
Bapu.
title, so to say.
Yeah,
And uh, uh, Gandhiji, I think, was a bit critical in the 30s because he was used to people obeying what he said.
yeah,
And my father sort of was the rebellious son. But later on, he, I think, recognized that my father was a great patriot like himself. And I think particularly, I imagine when towards the end of Gandhiji's life, when he saw that others in Congress did not listen to him anymore when he opposed the partition
partition.
along with independence, I think he appreciated my father's dedication to the freedom fight more than he did in the 30s when he wanted to manipulate him in a different fashion. And the other Congress leaders, more even Nehru, who was a leftist leader like my father, um, uh, when it came to a difference in opinion, they accepted Gandhi's
Yeah, yeah,
ruling and wishes. And my father did not necessarily when he felt it was in opposition to his struggle for independence.
yeah. And Anta ma'am, when we were reading Gandhi, Nehru, and Netaji, one thing was there that Nehru was much closer to Netaji's idea. He was very close to him. But when it comes to Gandhiji, he succumbed. When Gandhiji pressurized, he succumbed. But as you rightly said, the age difference between Gandhiji and Netaji was 28 years. It was more than in those days,
Yeah,
28 years is a father and son relationship. Uh,
yeah.
so people must understand this. And Gandhi is also quoted that had a time he was always said that about Netaji, and then he said ki if I would have 5 or 6 people like Netaji, India would have got freedom much before what we did. He always understood the importance of being a Netaji, and Indian history cannot be completed without the story of Netaji and Gandhiji, because they both complement each of them. So thank you so much, Anita ma'am, for joining this. And once again, we from all of us in India, we want you to have a long life, and Jai Hind. And someday, if you allow and if you talk to them, we would like to talk to any of the grandchildren, whosoever. I mean, if any of the grandchildren allow. Thank you.
Certainly, if they are willing to do that, I'm sure they'll be available. But let me ask you for one more appeal to
Yeah,
make. I do hope that even though unfortunately Netaji did not see India free, and I would say fortunately he did not see India partitioned, but I think after all these years, it's time that at least his remains were returned to India. And I do hope that there's sympathy and support in that effort on the part of our viewers.
of course, it is any day, and it will be our. We will be too happy, and it is going to be our privilege. Thank you so much, and Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.